Florence Kim saw the world in lines and angles, in potential and possibility. Her sketchbooks weren't filled with fleeting doodles, but meticulously rendered visions of spaces that could elevate, inspire, or simply make life better. A third-year architecture student at Northwood University, Florence was known for her precision and her quiet intensity, but lately, a restless dissatisfaction had gnawed at her. Her peers were designing luxury condos and sprawling corporate campuses for their final projects, sleek and impressive structures that felt, to Florence, strangely hollow. "Florence, your concept for the downtown revitalization needs more impact," her professor, Mr. Harrison, had critiqued last week, tapping a manicured finger on her pristine blueprints. "Where's the soul?" The words had stung, not because they were wrong, but because they echoed Florence's own nagging doubts. She wanted impact. She wanted soul. She just hadn't figured out where to find it. One crisp autumn afternoon, caught in an unexpected rain shower, Florence ducked under the sprawling concrete belly of the I-5 freeway. It was a part of the city she usually skirted, a grimy, forgotten underbelly where the roar of traffic was a constant, oppressive hum. And there, tucked away amidst the graffiti-scarred pillars and discarded pallets, was it. The underpass haven, read a faded, hand-painted sign, barely legible above a plywood door. It was less a shelter and more a collection of makeshift structures, cobbled together from corrugated metal, tarps, and salvaged wood. A few figures huddled near a barrel fire, their faces etched with a weariness that went beyond simple fatigue. The air hung heavy with the smell of damp concrete, exhaust fumes, and something indefinably sad. This wasn't just a shelter, it was a wound in the heart of the city, ignored and festering. As Florence watched, a woman with a child wrapped in a thin blanket disappeared behind the plywood door. There was no dignity here, no comfort, only the stark reality of survival. An idea, startling and audacious, bloomed in Florence's mind amidst the grime and the despair. This was it. This was the impact she sought, the soul Mr. Harrison demanded. What if her final project wasn't a theoretical skyscraper, but a sanctuary? What if she could bring light and structure to this darkest corner? The moment she presented her idea to Mr. Harrison, she could practically hear the gears grinding in his head. A homeless shelter? Under the freeway, Florence? That's unconventional. He adjusted his glasses, a frown deepening on his brow. It's not exactly in line with typical architectural design principles we've covered. "It's about human-centered design, sir," Florence countered, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "It's about creating a safe, functional, and dignifying space where there is currently only decay. It's about leveraging existing infrastructure in an innovative way. And it's real." Mr. Harrison stroked his chin, a flicker of something Florence couldn't quite decipher in his eyes. Skepticism, yes, but perhaps also a hint of intrigued respect. A project like this would require immense logistical planning, permits, community engagement, funding. You'd be building a real structure, not just a model. "I understand, sir. I'm prepared." Her initial forays into the underpass haven were met with a mixture of suspicion and apathy. The residents had seen countless do-gooders come and go, promising change that never materialized. They were wary, protective of their fragile existence. One evening, Florence found herself sitting near the barrel fire sketching. A man with a deeply lined face and eyes that held the wisdom of countless weathered storms watched her. He had a grizzled beard and wore a worn denim jacket. His name, she learned, was Walter. He'd been at the Haven for almost 10 years. "What's a fancy university kid doing down here, drawing pictures?" Walter's voice was gravelly, but not unkind. "I want to help," Florence admitted, holding up her sketch, a rough outline of a modular structure with windows that faced away from the freeway roar, towards a small, overlooked green space. "I think this place could be more to home." Walter snorted. "This ain't no home, kid. This is where you go when you got no home left." He gestured vaguely at the ramshackle walls. "Think some paint and pretty windows gonna change that?" "It'll change how it feels," Florence insisted. "How you feel when you're inside. Dignity, Walter. Every person deserves that." Walter considered her for a long moment, then just shook his head and stoked the fire. It wasn't a rejection, at least not outright. Florence's next step was to secure her first ally. David, a fellow architecture student known for his pragmatic approach and his uncanny ability to make anything out of spare parts. He initially scoffed when Florence proposed building a shelter under a freeway for her final project. Florence, seriously? You're going from smart city sensor grids to corrugated metal shacks? David had asked, eyes wide with disbelief. It's not just shacks, David. It's a chance to apply everything we've learned: sustainable design, structural integrity, community needs assessment, to a real, immediate problem. Imagine a space that's warm, safe, and truly serves the people who need it most. Florence's passion was infectious when she believed in something, and she believed in this with every fiber of her being. She showed him her detailed plans, incorporating passive solar design principles, rainwater harvesting for non-potable use, and modular units for flexibility. David, ever the engineer at heart, saw the technical challenge and slowly, the profound potential. Okay, Kim, you're officially insane. But I'm in. Where do we find 300 feet of reclaimed lumber and a plumb line? With David on board, Florence felt a surge of renewed hope. Their first comprehensive survey of the site was sobering. The ground was uneven, prone to flooding. The existing structures were fire hazards. There was no clean water access, and sanitation was primitive at best. But Florence saw not problems, but design challenges. Her new design focused on resilience and dignity. She envisioned a series of interconnected pod-like units, built on a raised, permeable platform to mitigate flooding. Each pod would be small but private, with lockable doors, a small window for natural light, and a connection to a central, shared community space. The community hub would include a communal kitchen, clean restrooms, laundry facilities, and a secure storage area. All powered by a small array of donated solar panels David had somehow sourced. The outer shell would use reclaimed materials, shipping pallets, recycled plastics, and corrugated steel. But the interiors would be bright, clean, and intentionally welcoming. Getting materials proved to be the biggest hurdle. Florence spent weeks networking, emailing NGOs, reaching out to local construction companies, and even posting on community forums. She gave passionate presentations to anyone who would listen, explaining her vision for a resilient haven. A place built not just with materials, but with empathy. Slowly, donations trickled in. A lumber yard offered discarded scraps at a steep discount. A plumbing supplier donated fixtures. A paint company gave them several gallons of an uplifting sky blue. The first day of construction, Florence, David, and a handful of volunteers, mostly architecture students lured by the promise of real-world experience, stood before the daunting task. The roar of the freeway above felt like a giant scoff. They started with clearing debris, a backbreaking job that tested everyone's resolve. Walter, from a distance, watched their clumsy efforts. He still emanated skepticism, but his gaze was longer, more thoughtful. One afternoon, as Florence struggled to pry up a particularly stubborn piece of concrete slab, Walter approached. "You're doing it wrong, kid," he grumbled, taking the crowbar from her. With surprising strength, he leveraged it against a nearby pillar, and the slab popped free. "You gotta use the environment to your advantage." It was a small moment but significant. Walter, the grizzled observer, was now a participant. Other residents, seeing Walter's involvement, began to offer their help, too. A man named Miguel, a former carpenter, helped with framing. Maria, who had a green thumb even in the grimiest conditions, started clearing a small patch of ground for a garden. The project stopped being Florence's project and became our project. The shelter slowly began to transform. The raised platform took shape, creating a dry, stable foundation. The modular pods, surprisingly spacious inside, started to rise. Florence taught volunteers how to insulate with recycled denim, how to install water-efficient fixtures, how to paint with proper technique. David supervised the wiring for the solar panels, meticulously ensuring safety and efficiency. The changes weren't just structural, they were emotional. Arguments among residents decreased. Laughter began to echo under the concrete arch. Hope, a fragile thing, started to take root. One blustery morning, a local reporter, following up on a tip from a curious university intern, showed up with a camera crew. The ensuing article, "Architecture Student Builds Hope Under the Freeway," captivated the city. It highlighted Florence's vision, David's ingenuity, and Walter's quiet wisdom. Pictures showed the before and after. The initial squalor contrasted with the clean lines and bright interiors of the nascent pods. The story went viral. Donations flooded in, not just materials, but money, food, clothes, and an army of new volunteers. Local businesses offered free meals to the construction crew. Architects from established firms, inspired by Florence's audacity, volunteered their expertise. Even Mr. Harrison, Florence's professor, visited, not as a critic, but as a silent observer, a proud smile playing on his lips. The city council, initially dismissive, now found themselves facing a public clamor. Letters poured in, demanding to know why a student was doing what the city hadn't. Mayor Davies, a pragmatic politician, saw an opportunity. He announced a public visit to the resilient haven, turning a student project into a civic event. The grand unveiling was a day of triumph. The rumble of freeway traffic above seemed less oppressive, almost like a celebratory drumroll. The underpass haven, once a symbol of neglect, stood transformed. The interconnected pods, painted in cheerful blues and yellows, gleamed under the filtered sunlight. The community hub was bustling, the kitchen sparkling, the bathrooms immaculate. Small planters burst with hardy greenery, tended by Maria. Walter, impeccably clean in a new donated jacket, stood beside Florence, a proud, almost tearful glint in his eyes. He beamed as residents, some of whom hadn't had a private, locked space in years, opened their new doors. Mayor Davies, surrounded by a throng of reporters, cut a symbolic ribbon. He spoke of community spirit, innovation, and the power of a single idea. But it was Florence's turn to speak that truly moved the crowd. "This isn't just a building," she began, her voice clear and strong despite the emotion swelling within her. "This is a statement. A statement that every life has value, every person deserves dignity, and that good design isn't just about aesthetics, it's about empathy. It's about creating spaces where people can heal, where they can hope, where they can simply be." She gestured to Walter. "Walter taught me that a home isn't just walls and a roof. It's feeling safe. It's feeling seen." The applause was thunderous, heartfelt. The Florence effect rippled through the city. Within weeks, Mayor Davies announced the formation of a new task force dedicated to addressing homelessness, explicitly citing the resilient haven as its inspiration. Funds were earmarked for similar modular, dignifying shelters in underutilized urban spaces. Existing shelters underwent critical review, with many adopting elements of Florence's design principles. Not just building better, but building with dignity in mind. David, energized by the experience, abandoned his corporate architecture aspirations. He joined a newly formed nonprofit specializing in community-led design projects, continuing to apply his practical skills to social good. Walter, now a recognized figure, became an informal elder statesman of the haven, mentoring new residents and sharing his story of resilience and transformation. He even had his own small garden plot at the haven, where he nurtured delicate herbs. Florence, of course, aced her final project. But the real grade came not from Mr. Harrison, but from the faces of the residents who now called the resilient haven home. Her path was clear. She pursued a master's in humanitarian architecture, dedicating her career to designing spaces that served the most vulnerable. She often returned to the resilient haven, walking through its vibrant spaces, exchanging smiles with Walter, watching children play in the small, safe courtyard. The roar of the freeway was still there, a reminder of the harsh world outside. But beneath it, Florence had built a testament to human kindness, resilience, and the profound power of a single audacious idea. She had found her impact, her soul, not in the towering heights of convention, but in the forgotten depths of a city's heart. That will be all for today. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification button. Goodbye.